Today we've got viaducts, we've got aqueducts, we've got abandoned rails, we've got a whole greenway coming through from Walsall to Lichfield. I'm on a bridge above the Lichfield Canal. This was originally part of the Worley and Essington, which is the canal behind us here. And this is what we're going to follow for the first part of our journey. This is going to take us to the McClean Way, which is a greenway being done by Back the Track, and that takes us all the way down into Walsall if we want to go that far. We're going to do up to Pelsall on this section, which may be over a couple of videos. But the Lichfield Canal, which is behind us, this is the very end of it here. There's a bunch of locks which go up in a flight behind us here, and they are currently abandoned. Now, if you're familiar with my canal channel, you'll understand that the Lichfield and Hafferton Canal Restoration Trusts are one of the biggest and the best. They are absolutely steamrolling ahead with the restoration, but it's all at the Lichfield end, unfortunately. So this is probably a good few years off. If you are familiar with the area and you've travelled on the M6 toll, you may see a very random aqueduct sticking out above the road, and that is to take the canal. And when the canal restoration were kind of in its earlier stages, they were building the M6 toll, and they knew right then that if they didn't get that aqueduct in, then they would never get it in, and the canal would be doomed to never be restored at all. So they did fantastic work and they got it in, and that's why you've got an aqueduct to nowhere. One thing you do have here, just in the fields over there, almost directly, if you follow the road to the right, there's a roundabout there. It's in the fields just above that. That's where the Sta Fisher Hoard was found, and that's the largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver ever to be discovered. So they found about 4,000 fragments in there, which was about 450 to 500 items that were broken up, and there was a lot of stuff like swords and stuff, and it was from all over the kingdoms, and they buried it all in one place. They reckon it's buried about 650 to 700 AD, and it was valued at about £3.3 million. It was found by a guy called Terry Herbert in 2009. It was a load of gold and silver and swords and other warrior equipment, but they also found parts of caskets and stuff like that in there as well. Being the biggest hoard ever found in the world, it's obviously culturally significant enough that you go past. It was in the news everywhere when it was found. But even on Google Maps, it states where it was found. So I expect if you're local to the area, you might have some good metal detectoring around here. And here we are, we're at an aqueduct. I was under the impression this was a bridge, so we've got a little treat here. I'm going to drop down now onto the tracks and see what's going on down there. We can cross under, and then we're on the railway. You can see the tracks are still in place here. So in different sections, this is in different stages. There's bits at the beginning. On the Walsall end, it's been tarmacked for years. On this end, it is literally just old track bed, and you've got this fantastic bit of track led down here. And actually, you can see here, this is the end of it. So what happened here is, in the 60s, passenger services ended on this line, and then the freight carried on until the 80s, until the 84, and this used to carry coal up and down mainly. Then just before the miners' strikes, this line actually closed. All the collieries and stuff in the mines had all closed down around here, so there wasn't really any point in it being here. But they did keep the line up to the A5, which is just over there, and that was used to carry chemicals and oil and stuff like that down the line, and carried on until 2001, so only 24 years ago, and they lifted most of the track here, but the one single track was left from this end down, and this is the end of it here. This area is a treasure trove of history. Not only have you got this old railway in place, not only have you got the fantastic aqueduct over taking the Worley and Essington Canal, you've also got behind me, that bridge there is Watling Street. That is an original Roman road which dates back to classic antiquity, so from Romans all the way through, and it's stayed as a working road all this time. There are diversions to it, of course, but it really is a cracking bit of history here. Look at this aqueduct, it's absolutely beautiful. If that's cleaned up and painted up, it looks fantastic. So this section is what they kind of class as the rougher section. It's not been tarmacked yet, and in the winter it gets quite muddy. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see any more track down here as we go, but we are going to pass through a couple of stations which I'm not sure what's left of him. And we're also going to go through, there's some areas where there's signals and all sorts. There's quite a lot still to see down here. Now this railway was built by a guy called John McClean, and he was a industrialist. He was a very rich bloke. He built this railway, and it was his own railway, which was unheard of at the time. It was the first time, definitely in Britain. I don't know if it was in the whole world, but it was the first time one person had ever owned the whole railway. But he also gave back to the people, and he built a pipeline from here, from Sandfields in Lichfield, all the way to the Black Country to feed water because of cholera. It was clean water back there, it wasn't that way. This is how they deal with drainage on railways, look. You've got a drainage channel all the way through there, and it takes water down from the bank. You've got holes on that side, you can see several of them, and this will run down to a watercourse somewhere. And they had massive cuts here, as you can see. The embankments up here are absolutely massive, so they really needed that drainage down here, otherwise the lines would just constantly flood. On my last video on this railway, people were complaining that why aren't they relaying the tracks? The first problem you've got with that for here is the sleepers are completely rotten. So you're going to have to lift all the track to relay the sleepers. Now, the councils and government and all those involved, Network Rail, have looked into this to see if it's feasible, whether it would make much difference to the area having a railway through. Most of the locals would argue, yes, it is definitely important, but the powers that be have decided against it. So what do you do in this situation? They're not going to relay the track, and not only is the track rotten, but in this section there is no track. This was removed decades and decades ago. The cost of restoring this is astronomical, and they don't want to pay it. So a cycleway, a green route through, is much more preferable than an abandoned railway. This, when they got here, was just overgrown, full of stuff. It was like a swamp coming through here in places, and they've transformed it into an area that's walkable. This is cyclable, we could go through this and put a road bike on this, but it's still a very good surface. And people were using it as a walkway for years, so they've just made it safer. And if they ever wanted to bring a railway back through here, you now have a lovely clear route all the way through, which could easily be transformed back into a railway. And because this was a double track, there would be space here to put a cycle path next to a railway. Another one that I get is, why don't they turn it into a heritage railway? You've already got the Chasewater just up the road, so having a second one here probably isn't great for the business there, because it's going to take customers away from here. A lot of heritage railways are struggling. It's expensive, the coal's expensive, the operating's expensive, even though most of it's volunteers. So having this as a greenway rather than an overgrown area is definitely much more preferable, and does, like I say, save it for the future. You've got some pretty cool stuff here as well. So here you've got some gradient signs, which they've put in to sort of show you. That's showing you the steepness up and down. Locomotives do not like a hill because they slide on the hill, and traction can be a nightmare. So you can only go a certain gradient, and if you're carrying a certain weight, you can't go on a steeper gradient. So you need to know what's going on with those. You can really see now how wide it is down here. Those drainage channels have been replaced by streams on either side, which isn't uncommon. And this was definitely wide enough for 2 tracks. Now what you've got here is the site of the old Brownill Station and a couple of bridges just up ahead. So this would have been nice and open back in the time. There's a pub up there called Smithy's Forge, so I imagine that was originally in a railway building. You've got a nice flat area here, which would have been a platform. Doesn't look like there was much space on that side really. So it might have just been a single platform here. I can't see anything left of it though. I expect this was all pulled up long ago and used elsewhere. And I found some. I didn't think any of this remained, but you can actually see some of the old station platform there, look, just buried away in here. So the platform would have been just up there. And I don't know if any more exists on this side. It looks doubtful because this has been turned into a slope. You can see bricks protruding out of there, and you can see a raised platform there. But I'm not too sure if there's any wall actually inside there anymore. Looking on Google Maps, that's actually, I think, quite a newer building. It's like a pub and a restaurant, so I expect it was on the site of the old forge instead. And you've got these massive bridges here. This one is original, and what they've obviously done is the one behind it, which is a concrete slab, is probably this just like a second bridge they could do a roundabout here. It's quite cool that they've kept the old bridge though. Too many of them were knocked down when things were abandoned, because rail track often, or a network rail often had to still maintain them because they were still railway structures, so they weren't maintained by highways, they were maintained by the railways, so they tried to get rid of them. And what you used to find quite a lot is they would basically infill them and concrete them in, and it would stop them from having to maintain the arch of the bridge because it was supported from below. And there's been a lot of campaigns to stop this from happening. I know Paul Whitewick has covered it a few times with some people on his channel, and it's something that we need to do, is preserve that heritage that we're losing so much. And that's what Back the Track are doing. You may argue that they're removing the rail lines to make this greenway, but the reality is it's so rotten they're not going to do it anyway. It's a trip hazard, the councils are going to want them removed. So by clearing this, and I mean, there were, like I say, there were no tracks here anyway, they're preserving the heritage by saving the structures really, because now this is a greenway, there's no way anybody's going to come in and fill those in or knock them down or anything like that, because it's going to be cheaper to put a new concrete structure in. So Back the Track are doing wonders down here to save our industrial heritage yet again. Just up on those bridges as well is the Brownhill miner. Now that's a statue that was put in place to commemorate a guy called Jack Jigger Taylor, who was killed in a mining disaster in 1951. He was from a mining family and was working in a pit of Walsall Wood when the roof suddenly collapsed in on him, and it was christened by Taylor's own great-grandson, which is pretty cool. In the 19th century, about 80% of the people who lived in the Brownhills area worked in the mines, and children as young as 11 used to go down. So it was major here, and actually the reason why the Hafton and the canals were abandoned was because of mining subsidence. So what used to happen is they would dig underneath the canal. Eventually that would collapse and take the canal with it. It happened to railways as well, but it was less devastating to a railway because a railway is much easier to repair, but as soon as a canal breaches and literally falls in on itself, everything just drains and you've got to rebuild the bed and all sorts. So it's a massive undertaking to repair the canals. And it closed a lot of tunnels, because often tunnels went through areas where they were looking to find stuff. And after the Duke of Bridgewater on the first canal, it's kind of the first or the second depending how you look at it, it was the first canal that was its own cut, not following a river navigation. He dug his tunnel into the hill and he found coal. So that coal was then turned to a wharf, and coal was extracted out through, and the tunnel was used as a way to get the boats straight to the resource. And a lot of people, when they were building canals, they surveyed the land to try and find the same things, and unfortunately a lot of them didn't. But they did go through areas where there was coal. So the coal mines would come in and they would dig under, the tunnel would collapse, and that would be the end of the canal. So we're now coming back over the Curly Wurly, the Wurley and Essington Canal, and this is a viaduct this time. You can see where there's space for lots of tracks here, which is pretty cool. And this is where we're going to end this video. We're going to start the next one just up ahead. You can see the Wurley and Essington look. It's known for its weed, which has died off. The problem is with the canal here is it's not very well used, but we'll go into that on the next video. So thanks for watching, have a great day.